The Great Satan, meaning the United States, has been expelled from the country, and it must never be allowed to regain influence here. Israel will not exist in the next 25 years. The spirit of jihad will never leave the Zionists alone. These were some of the bold statements made by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the former supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran and a Shia religious authority. Ayatollah Khamenei was among the pioneers of Islamic Revolution in Iran and one of the principal figures behind the overthrow of the Pahlavi monarchy in 1979. But how did Ayatollah Khamenei rise to the highest position of power in Iran after death of Ruhollah Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic? If you are interested in learning the life story of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, stay with us until the end of this video. Ayatollah Khamenei was born in 1939 in the city of Mashhad into a Shia religious family. His family was well known for preaching Islam and teaching Islamic jurisprudence, and this encouraged his father to educate his children in the principles of Islamic law from an early age. Like his elder brother Muhammad, Ali Khamenei entered a traditional religious school at the age of 4, where he began memorizing the Holy Quran. He later attended formal schools where he studied Arabic language and the fundamentals of Islamic jurisprudence. He continued his education at Darul Ta'lim al-Dini School, then at Suleiman Khan Seminary, and finally at Nawab Seminary, where he studied Arabic grammar and logic under a number of distinguished scholars until he reached the age of 16. At 16, he traveled to Iraq to study under the Iraqi-Iranian jurist Muhammad Hadi Milani. Remaining there for 2 years, he then returned to Iran, where his father, a respected and a pious religious scholar, encouraged him to continue his studies in Qom under Ruhollah Khomeini and Hossein Boroujerdi. He spent 6 years studying Islamic sciences under these scholars before being forced to return to Mashhad because of his father's illness so that he could take care of him. After returning to Mashhad, he married Mansour Bagharzadeh, who also came from a religious family similar to his own. Together, they had 6 children. During this period, Iran was under the rule of Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. According to opponents of the monarchy, the country was marked by political repression, and many opposing groups intensified their revolutionary activities in an effort to remove him from power. They argued that his policies openly favored the West and had turned him into an authoritarian ruler. One example frequently cited is the wave of arrests in 1975, during which thousands of citizens were detained and subjected to repression by SAVAK, Iran's intelligence and security organization. At a time when the government was unable to eliminate widespread poverty, the Shah organized lavish celebrations that attracted worldwide attention. One of the most famous was the 1971 celebration, commemorating the 2500th anniversary of the founding of the Persian monarchy, for which approximately $100 million was reportedly spent. That same year, protests emerged against such extravagant ceremonies. The government claimed that the events generated investment and economic benefits for the country, while critics argued that Iran under Mohammad Reza Shah was plagued by corruption and an unequal distribution of wealth. Despite Iran's dominant position in the global oil market as a member of OPEC, many people continued to struggle with poverty and accused the government of aligning itself too closely with the West. The Shah also replaced the country's official calendar, abandoning the Hijri calendar in the favor of imperial calendar, whose starting point was based on Cyrus the Great's conquest of Babylon. By that time, however, many believed that these measures had failed to address the country's deeper problems. The issue that most directly contributed to the Islamic Revolution, led by Ruhollah Khomeini, was the implementation of a series of reforms during the 1960s and 1970s, known as the White Revolution. These reforms were intended to modernize the country and increase national production. Among their objectives were expanding education, increasing school enrollment, and creating a better trained workforce. However, critics argued that the reforms also produced unintended consequences. They led to the emergence of a growing educated class that struggled to find employment, resulting in higher unemployment among graduates while simultaneously increasing political awareness among young Iranians. As a result, many of these young people became supporters of the Islamic Revolution. According to the book A Century of War, Anglo-American Oil Politics and the New World Order by F. William Engdahl, the events led by Ayatollah Khomeini and Khamenei against the Shah constituted a conspiracy. According to this interpretation, Britain and the United States, after consolidating their influence over the global oil market, faced a complex international crisis following the 1973 Arab oil embargo, which had been used as a leverage to pressure the West into forcing Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories. During this period, the Shah increased Iran's oil prices in order to finance rapid national development and improve the country's prosperity. According to this view, these politics negatively affected the interests of American and British oil companies operating in Tehran, whose contracts were approaching expiration by the end of the 1970s. The Shah reportedly even threatened that these contracts would not be renewed once they expired. Consequently, this interpretation argues that Britain and the United States supported the Islamic Revolution in order to overthrow the Shah and protect their own interests in Iran. However, regardless of whether these claims are accurate or whether the Islamic Revolution was in fact supported or financed by Western powers, many observers point to widespread extravagance, excessive spending, unequal distribution of wealth alongside widespread poverty, political repression, enforced disappearances, the expansion of security apparatus, restrictions on civil liberties, the lack of governmental accountability, various forms of corruption, and what many perceived as the erosion of the country's religious identity as defining characteristics of Mohammad Reza Shah's rule. For these reasons, a large segment of the Iranian population gradually became opposed to his government. From the early 1960s onward, Ali Khamenei became known as one of the opponents of Shah's government, particularly during the years of his study in the city of Qom, where he regularly attended the lectures and classes of his teacher and religious authority, Ruhollah Khomeini. As a young man, he joined the opposition movement and participated in revolutionary activities against the monarchy. He sought to prevent the transfer of power to the Shah's eldest son, Reza Pahlavi, believing he would continue the same policies as his father. As a result, he was arrested approximately 6 times between the 1960s and the mid-1970s. The political and religious movement that opposed the Shah's government and rejected the principle of hereditary monarchy initially pursued peaceful protests. However, like many opposition movements operating under authoritarian governments, some factions eventually adopted armed struggle, believing that force was necessary to achieve their goals. SAVAK, Iran's intelligence and security organization, believed that many of these armed groups were influenced ideologically by Ali Khamenei, who served as a preacher and religious instructor for many of their members. As a result, the authorities repeatedly attempted to monitor and restrict his activities, arresting him several times. By the early 1970s, although he had been released from prison, he remained under close surveillance, and increasing pressure was placed on him to stop delivering lectures and teaching. Despite these restrictions, Khamenei maintained 2 parallel forms of activity. One was public and widely known, while the other operated discreetly in order to avoid detection by the security services. Among the most important places where he delivered religious lectures and encouraged his students to oppose the government were Mirza Jafar Seminary and Imam Hassan Mosque. His classes attracted a large number of students, many of whom carried his ideas back to their own cities and villages. Within less than 5 years, his influence on the Shia Islamic opposition movement had spread throughout much of Iran. As opposition to the hereditary transfer of power continued to grow, the movement gradually developed organized leadership structure and underground communication networks. In 1974, Ali Khamenei was arrested for the 6th time and remained imprisoned for 1 year. Even after his release, he was prohibited from delivering speeches or teaching publicly. By then, however, the Islamic Revolution had gained tremendous momentum, with people from nearly every segment of Iranian society joining the movement against the Shah's government. Following the victory of the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Ruhollah Khomeini established the Revolutionary Council and appointed Ayatollah Khamenei as one of its members. He also became part of the leadership of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. His role within the council was considered significant, as he was responsible for helping develop solutions to the challenges facing the newly established Islamic Republic. The following year, he was appointed Tehran's Friday prayer leader, where he delivered sermons in Arabic so that Muslims across the Arab world would be able to understand them. In 1980, the Iran-Iraq War, later known as the 8-Year War, began. During the conflict, Ali Khamenei served as a member of the Supreme Defense Council and frequently visited the front lines to encourage and raise the morale of the Iranian soldiers. At that time, Iran was experiencing severe political instability, marked by assassinations and bombings. In June 1981, Khamenei himself survived an assassination attempt when a bomb exploded during one of his public appearances. Although he survived, the explosion permanently disabled his right arm. Shortly afterward, Mohammad Ali Rajai became president of Iran, but he and his prime minister were assassinated in another bombing. Following these events, Ali Khamenei was elected president of Iran, receiving more than 16 million votes out of approximately 17 million ballots cast. He served 2 consecutive presidential terms, a period regarded as one of the most difficult in Iran's modern history. The country was still suffering from the devastation of war, with much of its infrastructure destroyed, its economy severely weakened, and public morale deeply affected. Throughout this period, Ruhollah Khomeini remained the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution. Under Iran's constitution, the principle of Vilayat al-Faqih, guardianship of the Islamic jurist, places the country's highest authority in the hands of the supreme leader. To understand the significance of Iran's supreme leader, it is important to understand the country's political structure. Following the 1971 Islamic Revolution, Iran's political system changed from a monarchy to an Islamic Republic, fundamentally transforming the country's domestic and foreign policies and leading to heightened tensions with the United States, which had supported Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. Under the new constitution, the supreme leader became the highest-ranking official in the country, responsible for overseeing the general policies of the Islamic Republic. The supreme leader also serves as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and supervises the country's intelligence agencies. Decisions regarding war and peace ultimately fall under his authority. Within Iran's political hierarchy, the president ranks below the supreme leader and remains subject to his supervision. The purpose of explaining this structure is to illustrate the broad constitutional powers of the supreme leader. While presidents may change over time, the death or replacement of a president does not fundamentally alter the overall direction of the Islamic Republic. Iran's policies toward the United States, Europe, and the wider Middle East are ultimately shaped under the guidance of the supreme leader. Returning to the story, several months after the end of Iran-Iraq War, Ruhollah Khomeini died in June 1989. Following his death, disagreements emerged among Iran's political leadership regarding his successor. One faction believed that Khomeini's son should inherit the position of supreme leader, while another argued that he does not possess the required religious qualifications or scholarly standings. As an interim solution, it was proposed that a temporary leadership council be formed, consisting of two additional senior figures, Mousavi Ardebili, the head of judiciary, and Ali Mishkini, the chairman of the Assembly of Experts. At the same time, Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani strongly supported Ali Khamenei's candidacy. Rafsanjani stated that Khomeini had personally expressed confidence in Khamenei before his death. Despite continuing disagreements, the Assembly ultimately agreed to appoint Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as the temporary supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution. He remained in this position for approximately 2 months, while amendments to the constitution were approved, including the removal of requirement that the supreme leader must be a Marja al-Taqlid, the highest-ranking Shia religious authority. After the constitutional amendments were adopted, a large number of Iranians gathered in the streets to pledge allegiance to Ayatollah Khamenei as the country's new supreme leader. Members of Khomeini's family also publicly pledged their support. Following Khamenei's elevation to the position of supreme leader, Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani was elected president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. As the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution, he believed that his own children should also be raised according to the same path, especially his son, Sayyid Mojtaba Khamenei, who has often been referred as the man in the shadows. Before discussing him, however, it is important to examine some of Ayatollah Khamenei's most significant positions and policies during his years as a supreme leader. One of his most notable actions was the issuance of a religious decree or fatwa, declaring that the production, possession, and stockpiling of nuclear weapons, even for commercial purposes, were forbidden under the Islamic law. On several occasions, he emphasized that Iran's nuclear program was intended solely for peaceful purposes. This fatwa was also cited by Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs during meetings with the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) in Vienna. He also issued another fatwa declaring that the insulting of the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, particularly Aisha, was forbidden. According to Khamenei, groups claiming to represent Shiism while operating in Western countries were attempting to create division between Sunni and Shia Muslims. He argued that such efforts were directed by certain intelligence services, including those of Britain, with the objective of preventing unity within the Islamic world. In contrast, he consistently emphasized unity among Muslims. In several speeches, he expressed support for Egypt and its 2011 revolution, arguing that the wave of Islamic awakening across the Middle East could be viewed as a continuation of Iran's own Islamic Revolution. Among Ayatollah Khamenei's most prominent political positions has been his support for Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Palestinian cause. He has described Israel as an occupying regime and argued that historical narratives concerning its establishment have been distorted. He has also stated that certain historical accounts, including those related to the Holocaust, have been subject to distortion. From his perspective, true freedom exists within Islam, whereas the West does not offer genuine freedom. He has also argued that Islam protects women's rights more effectively than Western political systems. Within Iran, particularly after the protests of 2009, public attention increasingly focused on Mojtaba Khamenei. Some observers have claimed that Mojtaba played a significant role in coordinating elements of the Basij and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and exercised considerable influence over the elections that brought Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Hassan Rouhani, and Ibrahim Raisi to the presidency. Others have alleged that he was connected to the helicopter crash in which President Ayatollah Ibrahim Raisi lost his life. These claims have been widely discussed but remain matters of public speculation have not been conclusively established. One of the defining features of Ayatollah Khamenei's years as supreme leader has been Iran's support for allied armed groups across the Middle East, including Hezbollah in Lebanon. The objective of the armed movement, whose religious leadership is aligned with Iran's Shia establishment, has been to build a resistance movement against the United States, Israel, and the regional allies. Hezbollah has carried out numerous military operations against American interests, including the bombing of the US Embassy in Beirut in 1983. These military operations against American forces resulted in thousands of people being killed or wounded. And during periods of conflict between Lebanon and Israel, a number of hostages were also taken. For these reasons, the United States has designated Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. Hezbollah's activities have not been limited to confronting the United States. The group has also been involved in issues related to the Palestinian resistance, particularly through its relationship with Hamas. These developments became an even greater concern for Israel following Operation Al-Aqsa Flood on October 7, 2023. As regional tensions escalated, the European Union also became increasingly involved, especially after commercial shipping through the Red Sea was disrupted by the activities of Ansar Allah, commonly known as the Houthis of Yemen. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei served as the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution in Iran for more than 30 years. Ultimately, on February 28, 2026, on the first day of the 40-day war, he was martyred in a joint operation carried out by the United States and Israel at the leader's residence on Pasteur Street in Iran.